Ezekiel, Introduction. You're going to love this book of Ezekiel. It is jam-packed with exciting visions, descriptions of high technology, and information about events that are taking place even now and on into the future. This book of Ezekiel also contains more detailed information about the millennium, the 1,000-year reign of Yeshua the Christ with his saints, the Zadok, than any other book in the Bible, including the book of Revelation. The name Ezekiel means Elohim is strong, or whom Elohim will strengthen. Often people, when studying the Bible, overlook the fact that names have significant meaning. El in Hebrew means Elohim, and is the suffix, actually it's the prefix in Hebrew because Hebrew is read from right to left, of many names such as Samuel asked of Elohim, Ezekiel, El is strong, Elohim strengthens. Daniel, Elohim is judge. Joel, Yah is Elohim. Michael, who is like unto Elohim. Then we have the names beginning or ending with Yah, Yahweh's covenant name. Isaiah, the salvation of Yahweh. Jeremiah, whom Yahweh raises up, launches forth. Obadiah, servant of Yahweh. Zephaniah, hidden of Yahweh. Zechariah, remembered of Yahweh. Micah, who is like Yahweh. Yeshua, Yahweh's Savior, Yeshua. Ezekiel was the son of Buzi, and not only was he a great prophet during the Babylonian captivity, but just like Jeremiah, he was also a priest. He was taken captive in the captivity of Jehoiachin, who was the son of Jehoiakim, the 19th king of Judah. However, Jehoiachin reigned only 3 months and 10 days before the king of Babylon came and took him and all the best men and their families and treasures to Babylon. Ezekiel thus became a member of a community of these exiles from Judah who settled on the banks of the Chebar River, and it was there, by that river, that Yahweh personally visited him. That's right, there's no typo. What an awesome experience and sight that must have been, the details of which we will read about in this first chapter. They say, whoever they are, that behind every good man and strong man there is a woman, keeping him in line, of course, and giving him strength. Remember, Ezekiel means Yahweh strengthens. So now you know how he does it, he. Anyway, Ezekiel was definitely married and also had a house in his place of exile. See Ezekiel 8:1, where he lived in high regard among his companions, and the elders consulted him on all occasions. Unfortunately, Ezekiel's wife died in the year when the siege of Jerusalem began by a sudden and unforeseen stroke. The book of Ezekiel covers a 21-year period from about 484 BC to 463 BC, but ranges in subject matter dating from the world that then was to the world to yet come, even from desolation to restoration. If you have a companion Bible, there is a complete outline on page 1104, giving you an overview of the entire book. Let's begin our study. Ezekiel 1:1. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Chebar, that the heavens were open, and I saw visions of Elohim. It is recorded in Jeremiah 29:1 that Jeremiah sent a letter to the priests and prophets of the captivity. There can be little doubt, therefore, that Ezekiel, both a priest and a prophet, had seen and read that letter from Jeremiah. The time frame he gives, then, is a continuation in the chain of prophecy and a key to understanding not only the time of the first advent, but of the captivity by the coming king of Babylon, preceding second event. We will deal with some dates as speculation at a later time when we have more pieces to the puzzle. We need to also understand that the prophets wrote these things for us today in this final generation. The prophet Daniel, a contemporary of Ezekiel, was specifically told in chapter 12 of his book to seal up the words of his prophecy until the time of the end when the wise would understand. They would understand because there would be a geometric increase in knowledge of his word and secular knowledge as well. It is this increase in knowledge that will enable us to understand this first chapter of Ezekiel as well as the rest of the book. Peter also documents in 1 Peter 1:12 that the revelations of the prophets were for us, not for themselves. Again, this is important to keep in mind even as we read the events in this first chapter. Therefore, understand that until this modern space age, no one has been able to fully understand, that is, no one has been able to see the visions the way Ezekiel saw them. But the benchmarks have been given, such as the planting of the fig tree on May 15, 1948, marking the final generation, and the signs of heaven are declaring that we are in the final stages of the sign of Leo. We are in the last days. That being the case, you are witnessing a fulfillment of Acts 2:17, which is also a quote from the prophet Joel, as Peter explained. Let's read it and then examine it. Acts 2:17. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith Yahweh, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Do you believe we're in the last days? Okay, then this prophecy has to and is coming to pass right now. Hello? Elohim is pouring out his spirit on all flesh, i.e., worldwide, through the sons and daughters of the disciples of the Almighty Elohim, his children both male and female. And they are prophesying, i.e., teaching the prophets. And because of the increase in knowledge of these last days, and through the Spirit that he is pouring out upon his servants, we are able to see the visions that the prophets saw. Yes. What did you think when you read Acts 2:17? That people would start to dream up new stuff, new visions? There is nothing new under the sun. It has all been written before of old in his word. Yeshua Christ has foretold us all things in his word. He said so himself in Mark 13:23, quote, But take heed, behold, I have foretold you all things. Is this not the most awesome time to live in the history of mankind? It is so fascinating and exhilarating to see the scriptures come to pass almost daily. So get ready to see Ezekiel's first vision. Here it is. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, the word of the Yahweh came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and the hand of Yahweh was there upon him. When the word of Elohim comes expressly to a man of Elohim, and Yahweh personally takes hold of him, i.e., personally shows up to speak to him, you can bet that what he has to say is of utmost importance. Now understand what is about to be described. As the last few words of the verse, one declare the heavens are opened up for Ezekiel, the veil between the dimensions is parted, and good old Ezekiel is about to see Yahweh. Of course, Yahweh doesn't fly around like Casper the Friendly Ghost. You should know that he has a beautiful and magnificent palace and throne in heaven, which John colorfully describes in the book of Revelation. And he sits on his throne surrounded by the 4 Zun, living beings, And the Shekinah glory sparkles and flashes forth from his throne like a prism or rainbow of colored lightning. Now let's think about just a moment before we go on. Do you think Yahweh's technology was any less sophisticated back in the days of Ezekiel than it is today? Creation hasn't changed, and man hasn't even come close to matching the wonders and intricacies of the universe. But even so, imagine, if you will, trying to describe television or 747 jumbo jet or a microwave oven or even a cellular telephone to someone just 300 years ago. Electricity hadn't been discovered then. You couldn't even use simple words like plastic or batteries, etc. in your description. Think about it, because what you are about to read is the description of the high-tech, shall we say, interstellar vehicles that came from heaven with the throne of Elohim on board one of them. I should say with the throne of Yahweh on board one of them. If you must look ahead to verse 26 to document that, then by all means do so. However, Ezekiel had only a very limited vocabulary based on nature and the elements and the primitive technology and transportation of his day, like wheeled carts and chariots pulled by animals. Here, Ezekiel's description of what he saw as translated in the King James Bible. We will note other translations to help with clarity. Ezekiel 1:4. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof as the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. Please note the definition of two words used in this verse, for it will help in understanding the other translations. 1. The word color used here in the Hebrew is the Hebrew word ayin, which literally or figuratively means eye, and is used here in the sense of to see or appeared as. The word amber is chashmo and means polished spectrum metal or shiny polished bronze. So, as verse 1 says, the heavens opened up, and Ezekiel looked and saw what appeared to be a storm of fast-moving clouds coming toward him, and a mass of fire that flashed continually, and in the fire there was something that shone like polished brass, and that's from the Living Bible. Here are two more shots. I saw a storm wind coming from the north, a vast cloud with flashes of fire and brilliant light about it, and within was a radiance like brass, glowing in the heart of the flames. That's from the NEB. I looked, a stormy wind blew from the north, a great cloud with a light around it, a fire from which flashes of lightning darted, and in the center a sheen like bronze at the heart of the fire. That's from the JB. Do you begin to get the picture? Ezekiel had never seen a plane or jet or helicopter or rocket or space shuttle. Imagine him trying to describe some UFOs coming directly toward him. That is exactly what he's doing. Hang in there, there's more. Don't forget, you are fortunate in that you have the ability to understand what Ezekiel is describing here because of the increased knowledge and technology of this generation. Now, before we read any further, let's go to our previous study of Revelation chapter 4 and review some excerpts concerning our Father's throne. This is the Apostle John speaking. Revelation 4:2. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. Wow, here we go. John saw a throne in heaven, and someone was sitting on it. Guess who? And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne, in the sight like unto an emerald. Notice that he who sat on the throne was likened unto beautiful translucent gemstones, the significance of which we'll discuss shortly. For now, let's just see the picture. Now also visualize in your mind's eye a beautiful rainbow glowing about the throne with its magnificent prisms of light beaming forth. You are seeing the Shekinah glory of Almighty Yahweh. Verse 6, And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst of the stone and round about the throne there were 4 beasts full of eyes, before and behind. What John saw, he described as a sea of glass which resembled crystal before the throne. Can you imagine all this? It must have been absolutely stunning in beauty and brilliance and purity. Perhaps it is unfortunate that the translators of the King James Bible use the word beast to describe these living beings. Today, the word beast is often synonymous with monster and is used to describe creatures such as Godzilla and one's spouse. Oh, come on, Lance, you didn't really just say that, did you? Okay. But then again, if very few people ever even read the Book of Revelation, especially since many ministers tell folks they'll be gone in a rapture and don't need to read it, what a difference does it make? What difference does it make? The wise in this generation will check it out anyway. And so it is that the Greek word used here is zoon and simply means living being. And once again, there's really nothing new described here by John, for we have record of these entities elsewhere in Elohim's word. They're first mentioned way back in the book of Genesis, for these Zoa are the cherubim of Genesis 3:24 that were placed at the east of the Garden of Eden to prevent access to the tree of life, i.e., they were guards whose purpose was to protect. Genesis 3:24. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. And so it is that these Zun are cherubim, guards that stand at the throne of Elohim. John now gives us a more detailed description of their appearance. Revelation 4:7. And the first beast was like a lion, the second beast was like a calf, the third beast had a face as a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. If this is new to you, if this is the first time you're reading about the lion, the calf, the man, and the eagle, then you're probably perplexed and filled with wonderment. That is why the book of Revelation seems mysterious and sounds bizarre to some. But once you become familiar with the word of Elohim and have read it all with some degree of understanding, these beings will appear completely natural to you. Let's read one more verse describing the Zun. Verse 8. And the 4 beasts had each of them 6 wings about him, and they were full of eyes within, and they rest not day and night, saying, Holy, 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 Yahweh Elohim Almighty, which was and is to come. These guards do not require sleep, and they are not capable of exercising free will that could lead to rebellion. The phrases full of eyes before and behind and full of eyes within come from a figure of speech which has lost its meaning in the translation from Greek into English. It simply means that they looked all around, a thing which guards do. It is much the same as the flaming sword which turned every way in Genesis 3. We've discussed figures of speech in previous studies. In English, for example, when a person dies, we might say he kicked the bucket. That is a figure of speech that has nothing to do with buckets. It means he died. But such is not a figure of speech in French. So if we translate kick the bucket into French, the Frenchman would think of death, would never think of death, except dying while trying to figure out why some poor Christian would be kicking buckets around. Let's now go back even further in the Word to the Book of Numbers, chapter 2, and understand what these symbols are. If you are fortunate to have a companion Bible, on page 181 you will find a diagram of the encampment of Israel as they wandered in the wilderness of Sinai. Each of the 12 tribes had its own standard, i.e., a flag, which went before them. Look, the standard of Judah is the lion. The standard of Reuben is a man. The standard of Ephraim is the bull, ox, and the standard of Dan is the eagle. The encampment from the Book of Numbers. Now, you probably can't see this unless you're looking at the screen, but Dan the eagle is on the north. Reuben, a man, is on the south. Judah, the lion, is on the east, and Ephraim is on the west. Taurus is a bull. Okay. Mysterious symbols in the book of Revelation? Not so. You will also notice that Judah is on the east side. Read Ezekiel 1:10. It says the lion was on the right side. Of course it was. Revelation 4:9. And when those beasts give glory and honor and thanks to him that sat on the throne, who liveth forever and ever. When the living beings give glory and honor and thanks, then, number 10, verse 10, the 24 elders fall down before him that sat on the throne and worship him that liveth forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Thou art worthy, O Yahweh, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. He has created all things for his pleasure, which includes you and me. We have our children to give us pleasure and company and family. If you ever had children and one of them comes to you and puts his arms around your neck and gives you a big hug and kiss and says, Mommy or Daddy, I love you, then you will know the joy and the pleasure which our Father sees from his children. Do you see that there are 4 living beings, the Zun, present at the throne of Elohim? John saw them and described them for us as looking like a lion, a calf, a man, and an eagle. These are exactly the same as the standards, the flags of the tribes of his people Israel. Well, guess what? These same 4 living beings are coming toward Ezekiel in their highly polished bronze vehicles. How exciting! Tomorrow we will see them lower their landing gear and touch down. This concludes the first segment of Pastor Lancelot Knight's study of Ezekiel that covered Ezekiel chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. As soon as I get another chapter done, I'll post it, and we'll continue in this great study of Ezekiel. Yahweh bless.